Post-colonial texts must provoke deep reflection regarding the treatment of Aboriginal people, thereby encouraging personal and social transformation. Barbecue Area, released in 1986 and directed by Don Featherstone, examines the treatment of Aboriginal people through its stark portrayal of colonisation. Utilising the post-colonial context, Featherstone immerses responders into the perspective of the marginalised other. Critics agree in post-colonialism designates an anxiety to move beyond colonialist binary structures of self, other, and ultimately beyond any form of racism. Featherstone utilises satire and role reversal in the opening scene. There is an iconographic opening which foregrounds the Eurocentric Australian ideal within the modern day. The satirical tone is also created from the opening shot, in which Featherstone utilises verisimilitude, replicating the cinematographic style of nature documentaries. He positions responders as voyeurs that witness the natural inhabitants of the land pre-colonisation. This provokes responders to acknowledge the continued struggle of Aboriginal people as arising from colonisation. Later, Featherstone emphasises the colonisation of Indigenous people as continually disintegrating their culture. He utilises understatement when depicting the stolen generation, creating a comedic representation of a serious topic.
I don't want to go! Yes, you do.
It all seems a bit funny now.
But you'll get used to it. No! Don't be silly. Go look a nice lady. And then give you a proper education, much better than we can give you.
This juxtaposition accentuates the audience's empathetic response, creating a personalised sense of loss and increased cultural awareness. Thus, Barbecue Area effectively conveys the impacts of colonisation on Indigenous people as ongoing and institutionally entrenched. Barbecue Area's ability to convey this pertinent message makes it a culturally important text. Analogizing the horrid treatment of the Indigenous, Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad explores the imperialist exploitation of a class which is seen as backward from a Eurocentric viewpoint. By adopting the Eurocentric perspective, post-colonial composers force readers into the mindset of those who benefited from colonisation. Unlike Featherstone's bold invitation to the Indigenous perspective, The Secret River by Kate Grenville engages with the voice of Thornhill, a convict turned free man. This approach provokes thought into the treatment of the other from another marginalised perspective, again criticising colonisation. Grenville's British perspective offers remorse for her ancestors' part in ravaging the Indigenous. A rhetorical question showcases the erroneous nature of Indigenous land ownership as terra nullius. In King George owned this whole place of New South Wales, the extent of which nobody knew. But what was the point of King George owning it if it was still wild, trodden by only black men? Projecting to the current context, Grenville is calling upon the audience, especially those of European descent, to recognise the perpetualised discrimination of the other as endangering the current cultural climate. Additionally, the impersonal language of they and the blacks in there were no signs that the blacks felt the place belonged to them. They had no fences that said, "This is mine," highlights the colonisers' resistance in understanding the culture of the other. Now to an intertextual comparison. Barbecue Area encourages responders to consider the ongoing impacts of colonisation on the lives of the Indigenous through a personal lens. Whilst Featherstone's scathing satire confronts audiences, Grenville's colonial perspective offers a sympathetic view of displacement. Yet, both texts explore the way in which British action continues to negatively impact Indigenous people. Featherstone draws attention to one of the most tragic impacts of colonisation on the Indigenous other, the stolen generation. and Grenville highlights the labelling and marginalisation at the heart of colonisation. Heart of Darkness, similarly, emphasises the Indigenous struggle. For example, Marlowe's character demonstrates the colonial inquest as unacceptable. Recognising himself as an intruder on the Indigenous landscape, Marlowe states, "I was an imposter." Barbecue Area, The Secret River, and Heart of Darkness facilitate educated discussions about the Indigenous struggle. By adopting differing perspectives of either the colonised or the colonisers, authors collectively achieve their objectives of encouraging audiences to abandon their Eurocentric viewpoint and enact socio-cultural transformation. Promoting cross-cultural understanding appears to be integral for achieving a unified Australia.